The Colorado Buffaloes are taking on Delaware this weekend. It could be a trap game. Let's hear about why.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward Mazda. Move and be moved. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you for making me your first listen of the day. Joining me today is my FCS insider, Zach McKinnell. Although Delaware has sort of taken that next step, they're still freshly an they were an FCS program about this time of last year. So figured Zach was the guy to go to, and he did a great job breaking down North Dakota State last year. So it's our yearly tradition of having Zach on the show. Zach, how you doing?
Good, man. Good. It's good to talk about Delaware for, I guess, one last time before I forget about them forever.
Yeah, this is like the last page for you in the Delaware book, where it's like after this, you're just like, okay, I'm done with you. I'm done. I'm moving on.
That Zach they get to be irrelevant in the CUSA.
Yeah, Zach is. It's like a breakup. It's like you're just giving me the box of their stuff, where it's like, this is your stuff. This is the last time we'll see each other. Let's talk about trap game. First of all, for those of you that don't know, trap game is essentially a game that you're supposed to win, but one where it's either you're looking ahead or you're just sort of in a fragile state where a team can catch you off guard. And I think Colorado, I don't think they're in a fragile state, but I do think they're in a weird state, right? I think they had Georgia Tech down to rights early in that game last week, and they ended up losing. They kind of missed on opportunities to I call them kill shots, right? They had 3 opportunities to get a kill shot in the first quarter to go up 21-0 or even 13-0, right? A couple field goals would have been nice. And they didn't. And then Georgia Tech and Haynes King, they basically just ran quarterback power the rest of the game. And all of a sudden Georgia Tech wins, right? And so Colorado is doing some soul searching this week. Do you view this as a trap game for Colorado? Should they be worried about this Blue Hens team?
I don't think so. I'll be honest with you, Kevin. I think it would have been more of a trap game if Colorado would have won last week. And I know that might sound counterintuitive, but for me, they beat Georgia Tech, right? They're riding the high. They think, hey, we're this good, right? We just beat a really good Georgia Tech team, and we'll smash Delaware. And we'll move on to Big 12 play. We'll move on later in the season. I think the loss for me probably woke Colorado up, especially the way they lost. And I just think the coaching staff, when you look at who's on the coaching staff for Colorado, the players, they're going to be locked in because they know if they start 0-2, Kevin, their dreams of what they wanted to accomplish this season are probably over. I know neither one was a conference loss, but it doesn't project well, right? If you have a loss to Georgia Tech and Delaware on your resume, if you want to get in at large bid to the playoffs, if you don't win the Big 12. So I think they're going to be locked in. I don't view this necessarily as a trap game. I'm going to be honest with you. I came on this show last year and told everyone North Dakota State was going to be more competitive than they thought. It was. I don't think this Delaware team is near as talented as what that North Dakota State team was last year. And that's no shot at Delaware, but a North Dakota State team has some pros. There's a reason Cam Miller got drafted. There's a reason they had a first-round pick on the offensive line. And there's a reason North Dakota State went on to win the FCS national title. I think Delaware could be dangerous if you let them hang around, Kevin, but I got a feeling Colorado should be locked in. Now, I don't know if this would be, for me, I'd be shocked if they overlook Delaware this weekend after losing.
Yeah, the North Dakota State game honestly came down to a last play. I think it came down to had Cam Miller had maybe like 5 extra yards on his arm, maybe they win that game, or maybe a broken tackle at the end of that game, and things are different. But the thing that worries me about this Delaware game is I think we often in college football get to a point where it's like, oh, we look at a team and it's like, that's Delaware. It's like, okay, we're just going to hang 30 on them, right? Like I think that's part of my concerns with Coach Prime talking about who's going to play at quarterback, who's not going to play, right? Where he's like, we're going to play Julian Lewis. It's like, are we addressing this Delaware team like we're just going to beat the brakes off of them because we're projected to win by, I think the lines have at 24 or 23.5. Are we just like sort of viewing them as like, this is an easy game, or are we just sort of mixing things up, right? I think Delaware, and I'll have you attest to this right now, they have some nice pieces, right? Like how does Delaware get their wins? Like what does Delaware want to do to you to sort of, I guess, get you on the ropes?
Well, last week they did a really good job establishing the pass, and it was mainly because they couldn't establish the rushing attack, and they really struggled rushing the football. Their quarterback was their leading rusher with 44 yards rushing. I mean, their top running back ran for 34 yards on 6 carries. So I think for them, like the goal would be to establish the run a little bit more. But if you remember, Marcus Yarns was their running back last year, FCS All American. He's in the NFL now. He was an undrafted free agent, went to the Senior Bowl and all that. So they're replacing a good bit of talent at running back. I think for me, it's going to be whether Colorado can run the football because Delaware made Delaware State very one-dimensional last week, where Caden Bennett he was off rhythm, throwing interceptions, couldn't ever get anything going through the air. But Delaware State ran the ball really well against Delaware and kept this thing close in the early part. And it's funny because Colorado's biggest weakness has been able to run the football
Yeah.
and they haven't been able to establish the run. So, what I think Delaware would like to do is not let Colorado just air it out with all the talent they have at wide receiver that they brought in, and they're going to try to make Colorado do what they're not comfortable doing, and that's run the football. And I think if Delaware can run the football, control the time of possession, which is what we saw Georgia Tech do last week, they're going to try to use that. And their quarterback, which they have two guys who they can start at quarterback, Nick Mininucci, and they also have Zach Marker. Zach Marker actually got banged up last week. So it was Nick at quarterback, went for 273 touchdowns, no picks. Nick can move, and that's going to be the interesting thing is I don't think he's like a Haynes King where they're going to run QB power with him, 8 times up the middle. But if the pocket breaks down, he has the athleticism where he can get out and make some plays. And that's going to be what's interesting with Colorado because they really struggled against Haynes King last week in containing his legs.
Yeah, and I think if you're Delaware, it's like maybe that's not in our game plan, but maybe maybe we figure out a way to put that in the game plan, right? A few quarterback powers here and there. You mentioned running the football for Colorado, and I completely agree. I think this goes back to 2023, which granted the offense line was legit terrible. Colorado has yet to commit to running the ball, right? They preached all off season this year. We're going to run the ball. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then after the game, you have Jordan Seaton going, if the box is empty, we should run the ball. If the box is full, we throw the ball. In other plays, we could do an RPO because we have good running backs, right? And they gave Micah Welch, and this is for Colorado fans who are kind of upset with Pat Shurmur. Micah Welch had 11 carries for 64 yards, averaging 5.8 yards per carry. That's pretty good, right? But they kind of went away from him. Simeon Price, who I wasn't expecting much out of, honestly. He hasn't lit it up at Coastal Carolina or Mississippi State. 5 carries for 30 yards, 6 yards per carry. And then Kalen Taylor, familiar name, I'm sure. He only got 1 carry for 2 yards, but he did get 3 receptions for 38 yards and a touchdown, right? And Deion Sanders said this week they're going to try to get the Kalen Taylor the ball more. He has a nickname, Zach, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this. Maybe you'll appreciate my reference. He goes by Trackhawk. I said that they need to have Trackhawk touches, and I don't know if you remember or anyone remembers, but back in the day, TCU had Kavonte Turpin, and I don't remember the number, but they had what were called Terp touches. And it was basically like, we want to get Kavonte Turpin the ball X amount of times, right? And I said Trackhawk should get 12 touches per game at least. Last week, he got 12 snaps. I think they misunderstood the Locked On Buffs episode. Like maybe my audio cut out and they're like 12 snaps maybe, but they need to get him the ball. They need to get the running backs more involved. And ironically, they posted a graphic of all 3 running backs yesterday. And I was like, okay, maybe you should use these guys, right? You have your best offense lineman saying you need to run the ball more. You have 3 guys who played well. If you're Colorado, as Sandra Bullock said, run the dang ball, right? That's what she said. You got to listen to Sandra. Zach, if Colorado can run the ball and just sort of like say Caden Salter only has to throw the ball 13 times and they win the game, right? If you're Colorado and you just rush for 200 yards or 250 yards, what does that do for you confidence-wise? Even though it's Delaware, it's got to do something, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been listen, you know Colorado more than me. I mean, when's the last time Colorado ran the ball like that on anybody?
Well, I do know that the last time they had a 100-yard rusher was 2022. So they've yet to have a 100-yard rusher in the Deion Sanders era.
I mean, so here's where I'm torn. It's like that's not been the identity of a Deion Sanders offense since he took over head coach. So is it going to change, Kevin? I don't know. Maybe at this point we just kind of say he is what he is, and they're not going to run the football that much. Or I just don't know if it's like the run concepts they're using are just not executed properly. The offensive line is not executing at a high level. But come on, man, you got too much talent at running back to not be able to run the football. I think that should be the first key is establishing the run because I think with Delaware, you should have the advantage on the line of scrimmage on both sides. You should be able to win your one-on-one matchups up front and be able to run the football. If Colorado can't establish the run against Delaware, I mean, I look ahead on the schedule and it's like, who are we confident that we can run the football on if we can't get Delaware? So that would be a concern if Colorado isn't able to at least establish some sort of rushing attack this weekend.
Yeah, and I think you just have to force the issue if you're Colorado, right? I think you just go, okay, we're going to run the ball X amount of times. Like, we're going to run the ball 40 times today, right? And just like make it a thing. Like, make yourselves run the ball, because I think you just look at like the teams that have success, they can run the football. And it gets to a point for every team. Like, Notre Dame lost to Miami, and they did a lot of things wrong. Miami played well. But your best player, Jeremiah Love, had like 5 carries for like 20 yards or whatever it was. Like, they weren't utilizing the run at all, right? The run game is complementary. I had hopes that Deion Sanders could utilize the run game, because at Jackson State, Sivion Wilkerson had 1,000 yards that one year, right? Did he not? And so I was like, what was so special that year where they were like, we're running the ball? Like, why have they shied away from running the ball? I don't know. Maybe you have an answer for that, Zach, but I think now, because Shedeur Sanders is no longer there, everyone was like, okay, they're going to run the ball more because they don't want to. They're no longer boosting his draft stock. I never bought into that method. I just think the offensive line was that bad to where it was like it's almost useless to run the ball if they're constantly getting tackled in the backfield before they can even get to the line of scrimmage. But Colorado needs to run the ball. This shouldn't be a trap game. In conclusion, to like a high school essay, in conclusion, this should not be a trap game, right? Colorado has the talented roster. They have a good defense, right? I think they just got tired against Georgia Tech, and I mean, Haynes King running the ball down your throat 20 times is tiring. And then you just have to sort of know that, like, if you lose this game, like, it's not going to be pretty. And we'll talk about that later. We're going to take a quick break, but first, or before we do, Zach's going to preview all of the guys for Delaware, but first, a quick break. Sorry, that was a little mess there. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Upside. Now, let me tell you about Upside. If you're not familiar, get familiar, because they have everything you need. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon or other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code FOOTBALL for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code FOOTBALL. Disclaimer, offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Mazda. This is Mazda moving the game forward, brought to you by those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it, because these moments do more than win. They push what's possible. They remind us to go that extra yard, shift into that extra gear, and keep the game moving forward. So obviously Colorado didn't win, but I think a defining moment of the game for the Buffs in the positive light was when DeKalen Taylor caught that touchdown, right? It kind of showed, I mean, it was early in the game, but it kind of showed like, hey, this is a guy who can make plays, right? He's underrated, undersized, and now Colorado has a secret weapon. So feeding DeKalen Taylor, he's like what keeps fans and players alike moving forward. They chase the next great moment, and now Colorado is going to be chasing the next great moment. So when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like that, there's more to every highlight. There's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Okay, welcome back to Locked On Buffs. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. The football season is here. We have a lot of fun things in store. Me and former Colorado Buff Jordan Dominic are going to be doing film breakdowns after the games, so we can tell you what went right, what went wrong. Zach, let's talk key players for Delaware, right? I think for Colorado, we know it's going to be Caden Salter. We know it's going to be Julian Lewis in whatever capacity he plays. Whatever running back has the hot hand. And then defensively, I think I'm looking for a Jaheim Otis breakout game. If you're not familiar with Jaheim Otis, he's the Alabama transfer that was a freshman All-American that is sort of – it's like they keep telling him he's the best, but like he doesn't do best player things during practice. So he's like, they keep having to talk to him and be like, hey, you're really good. You should act like it. And then they also have Sean Myers, North Alabama. He's expected to get some more snaps at linebacker this week as well after being the highest graded player on PFF this past weekend. So let's talk about Delaware guys. Who's someone where we're going to be like, oh, wow, that guy is kind of torching us right now.
Yeah, we talk about establishing the run. Joe Silver didn't have a good game last week, but came in as like a Doak Walker Award watch list, preseason All CUSA, averages about 6 yards per carry for his career. They're going to have to find a way to get him going. I think it's the offensive line too, man. We always talk about the difference in these games is the offensive line. They have a bunch of guys with a ton of experience. It starts with Fenton Bros on the offensive line, 6'2", 312. He's on the Shrine Bowl watch list. He's preseason All CUSA. He's one of the 6-year players they have. He redshirted last year due to injury. So super, super experienced. And you add him with an Anwar O'Neal at offensive tackle, 6'6", 315. Also was on the first team CUSA watch list. Has started 12 straight games at left tackle for them. And on top of that, too, you have Patrick Shupp and Cole Snyder, 6'4", 350, 6'6", 315. Both guys, all CUSA, also has started multiple games in their career. Cole Snyder has actually played in over 19 games. He's from Calgary, so a different type of kid there. Also, Nick LeBoy at wide receiver, man, 6'2", 195. Transfer over from Cornell, has over 1,200 yards in his career, and is probably going to be one of their top targets on the outside. And he's probably paired with Jake Thal, who's a guy who can be a special teams threat as well, transferred in from Michigan. And so, like, those are some of the offensive guys I would say to look out for. Defensively, I mean, they got a ton of new starters, but I would say Ethan Saunders at defensive end would probably be the guy. He's started 37 consecutive games for them, and then Keyshawn Hunter, who's a bit of an undersized defensive tackle, only 6 foot 280, but was a preseason All CUSA player for them. And so I think those would be the guys I would point to. And if you wanted another one, I'd probably Dylan Trainer at linebacker, All CUSA guy as well. For his career, 21 starts, 139 tackles, 11 tackles for loss. So those would probably be the guys that I would point to Colorado fans should be looking out for.
I heard 6'2", 280 at the defense tackle spot, and I'm just telling myself, I'm like, if Colorado decides not to run the ball against that, like this is sort of a litmus test, honestly, Zach. Like this is to go into the same tangent we just had, but like obviously we know Delaware is a solid team, right? There's a reason they got the invite to move up. That being said, there's a talent gap, there's a size gap. They do not have the athletes Colorado does, and that's okay. That being said, if Colorado chooses not to run the ball, it's like, okay, they're not going to run the ball. Like that is like this game won't define Colorado's season, I don't think, by any means. It's only week 2. But it will define like whether or not we could trust them to run the ball, right? That is just that is all I've learned from that. You did a great breakdown on those other guys, and I think the guys that scare me the most, obviously, you got to go mobile quarterback, right? That until Colorado proves they can stop it, that's sort of like oh shoot, like what do we do with this sort of scenario? Because I mean, mobile quarterbacks, they're not rare in college football anymore, right? You run down the list. I know Colorado plays BYU. They have Bear Bachmeier, who I like to tell people he wears number 47 because he was a running back in his past life, his early career. They have Avery Johnson on the schedule. Whatever's wrong with Kansas State, I don't know, but I'm sure they'll have it figured out by week 13, right? Kansas State is going to be good eventually, and Avery Johnson is very mobile. Devin Dampier, he was at New Mexico last year. He absolutely torched UCLA, and he is about as electric as they come as a running quarterback. So they need to figure out how to contain running quarterbacks, how to game plan for running quarterbacks, and obviously Delaware is good practice for that. He's not going to win the Heisman by any means, but he's a guy that could use his legs, like you said. And so I want to talk some key players defensively for Colorado. A couple of them you should know. Sean Myers, excuse me, Zach, you know about Sean, right? Like guy who balled out. He was kind of a surprise get for Colorado. He was late in the game. I think they were a late offer on him, and they didn't play him a lot last week, right? They started Reggie Hughes from Jacksonville State, and they started Martavius French from San Antonio. And it was like, okay, we're riding with these guys, but Sean Myers is sprinkled in. And now Sean Myers is going to take someone's job, right? And I'm looking for the linebackers to be better because Deion Sanders, quite frankly, said they need to be better. He said they need to be more physical on the defensive front. The linebackers need to be more physical. So those are my key players for Colorado. I think Juju Lewis is also somewhat of a key player because even though people are kind of iffy on whether or not this is a quarterback competition, I don't think you announce your backup's going to play unless you're confident you're going to beat the brakes off Delaware, or the job is kind of open, right? I don't think the job has to be like a full-on battle right now, but I think the door is open. Zach, would you agree with that comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw some good things from Caden, but at the same time, I don't think he did enough to solidify himself as the full-time starter, especially
Yeah,
if Juju's as good as everyone thinks he is.
which I mean, he throws a nice ball. He does, and I think the craziest part about Juju is I had someone on from the Georgia Tech rivals writer. He was saying that Juju was injured during his state championship run this past year. He had like an injury on his throwing hand, and he was still dicing teams up. So those are your key players to know. When we come back, we're going to talk about what a win does for both teams and how it'll hurt one or help the other. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Colorado, like I said, kind of went with him earlier. You got to go with Kalen Taylor. He delivered in a big way in his 12 snaps, 4 touches, or 4 touches for 40 yards and a touchdown. Kind of got Colorado's offense going early, kind of showed what Colorado's offense should look like when it's operating as good as it can. And when the pressure was on, he came through. So there's no hesitation, no delay. And you've been watching week after week. This performance wasn't a fluke. DeKalen Taylor, he's a guy that made plays at Incarnate Word, and I can expect him to continue to do so with the Buffs. And just like DeKalen Taylor delivered for Colorado, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by the Locked on Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. The football season's now here, right? The off season felt like it took 10 years to get here, Zach. But now football's here, and we could talk ball. Let's talk what a win does. For Delaware, what does a win do for them?
Man, talk about some momentum. First year in the FBS, you knock off Colorado and all the hype that surrounds Colorado with Deion Sanders and all the talent they brought in. And it probably makes you feel like you have a chance to compete year one in the CUSA. And it shows that I think it just further solidifies Ryan Carty as one of the better coaches in college football, one that's been overlooked. He's done a heck of a job his whole tenure at Delaware. So that would just be a massive win for the program's trajectory launching into FBS.
Yeah, I think for Delaware, it's sort of like a statement and program win where it's just like, okay, we belong here, right? And I'm not saying they don't belong here, but I feel like everyone needs that moment, whether it's transferring up from a G5 or FCS program. Like everyone needs that moment where it clicks, where it's like, guys, I'm like Coach Clardy's like, I told you we belong here. And like, this is you showing you belong here. Right. And that's sort of a win that you could propel yourself into success down the road. Right. I think even North Dakota State last year, even though they didn't win, I think the big takeaway from them was like they hung in with a 9-win Big 12 contender. And that's sort of like it's not like you don't hang a banner for that. You don't get a trophy for that, but it's certainly like it boosts everyone's confidence, right? For Colorado, a win sort of, I think, backs everyone off, right? I think a win sort of gets all the pressure off your back for like another week, right? Then they play Houston. We'll see how that goes. But Colorado needs some confidence to be built. I think Colorado's still in this weird spot where, and I think this is the downside to bringing in so many new players, is like they don't know who's going to be their 5 guys at receiver, right? They don't know who's going to be their rotation across the defensive line just yet. So I think this answers some of the questions, and I think this sort of just gets you going in the right direction. A loss for Colorado, because you could tell me what a loss does for Delaware real quick. I don't feel like it does
Probably
much.
nothing.
Right. It's just like, okay, we're still figuring things out, right? For Colorado, the timeline's going to be toxic. There's going to be calls to do who knows what. And I just don't think Colorado wants to be in that position to where they find out, right? You just handle business, right? You're 24-point favorites, handle your business, get it done. And that way just move on to Houston, right? Don't overlook them, but handle your business. I feel like that's a fair assessment. Would you agree, Zach?
Yeah, yeah, the timeline would be real nasty if Colorado. If this game's even close, Kevin, we've both seen Colorado, and even going back to Jackson State Twitter, if it's close, it's going to be in shambles. So I think this needs to be a solid win for Colorado, win probably by 2 scores or more.
I was gonna say, what's a solid win? I would say, I would say like 17 points plus is a solid win to me. Because 14, It's like, well, I don't know. It's like North Dakota State. You're like they came back from down, whatever. So that is what you need to know about the Delaware Blue Hens and the Colorado Buffaloes this weekend. Zach, I appreciate you for hopping on. You're a busy man. Tell the people where they can find your great work.
Yeah, man. The Blue Bloods on all podcast streaming platforms and YouTube, and FCS Football Central on si.com/college/FCS.
Yeah, he's doing it all everywhere. He does great work, so make sure to go check his work out. I'm Kevin Borba, host of Locked On Buffs, and you know me from Athlon Sports as well. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow.